podcast. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. And actually, you two are in a group together.
Okay.
FYI, you are in a group with Elizabeth. The only three who have attended sessions I thought could be in a group together.
Okay, that's perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. But let's go ahead and go over the guidelines so then you all can just ask me if you have any questions about what we're doing for it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you can see that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So here you can find this on Canvas too, but here's some logistical information on what I'm asking you to do for this group assignment. So as you all know already, it's a group podcast assignment, which may or may not be something that you've done before, but it's an assignment that those of us who have online courses have been encouraged to do because it actually utilizes this online environment. So the reason why I'm saying that is the IT department that helped train us, told us that if you need help as you're developing your podcast, they're here to help you with all of that stuff too.
Okay.
So I want you to feel free to reach out to them. This is something they're encouraging, and I think this is something that could be really good for you all, like your portfolio. When you start applying for jobs, you'll have this really cool podcast that you could say, I did this with a couple of classmates, and you can share it with them. It's not even like you have to talk about it. So it has a lot of potential. Some of the important stuff before we get to exactly what you're doing, the week that your podcast is due, we don't have any readings due. You just have a full week to work on the assignment. And part of that is because I think there's going to be a learning curve with this. So I'm giving you plenty of time to work on it and to check in with me if you come up with any challenges. Okay?
Okay.
So be aware that that's coming up. That doesn't mean to wait until then, but for those of you who work a lot, you have some time to do it then if you need to. Other things, all of this I'll talk more about once it gets closer, but the first deadline you need to worry about is the topic idea, which will be due April 3rd. This topic idea is basically you're going to choose an issue to talk about for your podcast. So this can just be one word, this is what we want to do, or a phrase. I just need to see that you're on track for that. And these outlines, you'll see later on here, let me just scroll down. You'll see that I've given you sort of an outline to work with. The outlines that are due on both of these dates are credit, no credit. But the more you give to me on April 10th, the more I'll be able to give you feedback for April 24th. So this is me sort of saying you have agency to do what you want. So if you don't want to get a lot done, that's fine. It's just on you to sort of prepare at the last minute. And then all this other stuff, I want you to try to aim for about 15 minutes. 10 to 15 is long enough. And you already know about your group members, so you have that squared away. As far as what you're doing for the assignment, like I said, you're going to pick an issue. Here, this will help actually. Let me just stop right here. So you're going to pick an issue to talk about. So in your podcast, you'll start with think about it sort of like a presentation in class, but obviously there's not going to be visuals for you to work with. So you're going to start trying to get us to want to continue to listen. So that might be with a question. It might be with something funny. It might be with a nice quote that you think will work, any of that. And make sure that you're doing things like telling us what you plan to do for the rest of the podcast. So all of that stuff is similar to what you do in class. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay, cool. The next thing that you'll do is you'll tell us about the issue that you've decided to choose. So I'm keeping this broad because I want you all to choose something you want to do, but this could be something like if you wanted to talk about gender and politics, which is what we'll talk about today, you might talk about that generally in this point, and then towards the end of this main point one, you might narrow down your focus to specific political actors today. Right? So you might say, there's been a lot of research done on the way Hillary Clinton utilized the rhetoric of charisma. We want to look a little bit into how Kamala Harris is doing this. And that's when you start to analyze Kamala Harris or whatever actors you decide to use. And then finally, something that will be more challenging is you're going to suggest what these people that you've chosen, so it needs to be at least 2 people, what they could do in the future. Okay, so this is you sort of being analytical about like using the readings to say, here's some suggestions if you're actually listening to us. And then finally just conclude, and the usual sorts of conclusions like you would do in any sort of presentation. Leave us wanting more, but make sure that you're reviewing the points and all of that fun stuff. I know this is a lot, but any questions or comments? No?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
All right. I'm guessing as you start working on it, things will start to come up. But yeah, as always, check in with me as they come up. One final thing that's really important is you do group evaluations after you turn in your assignment. So this is due, I believe it's May 4th, so the day after. And all you have to do is rank, and I'll talk about this again, but you rank each other. So I'm telling you this now because don't slack off, because your grade will eventually be affected if you do slack off, if your group members know it, and like you're all graded equally. So this is the one way that your group members can sort of be like, well, they didn't do anything. So I don't think you'll do that, but just throwing it out there.
So the highest for each member is 25, right? Okay.
Exactly. And everyone can get the same. You know, some groups work well and everyone just gets 25 and it's easy, but other groups complain, and this is one way that I can sort of balance out the complaints.
Okay.
And here, like always, I have a rubric to just give you an idea of some more details about what that outline might look like, or how your podcast will look. All right. Cool. Well, if there are no more questions, we can go ahead and get on to the reading.
Wait, I do have one.
Yeah.
Does it needs to be recorded?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's really important. You should see in the email that I sent to you all, I believe this morning, and
Okay.
Phyllis talks about this too. You need to use SoundCloud to upload your podcast. If you have another program, that's fine. SoundCloud is the one that CSUN is familiar with. So I'm using that so that way if you have problems, you can talk to IT about it. And yeah.
How the SoundCloud works in multiple situations? Because I'm not sure my group members we will have it together.
So what you might have to do, and on the syllabus I talk about this too, you might have to end up having some editing software, something simple, like some Macs come with it. I'm guessing PCs come with it too, like GarageBand or something, where one person records part of what they're going to do and then the other person records another part of what they're going to do. And just mash them all together. It's okay if like the sound quality isn't perfect like this. I know that you all are not like in a technical class, but what I'm looking for is that you're all working together and you're putting something together that sort of makes sense. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Yeah, and finally, we will editing this.
Could you say that again?
The editing.
Oh,
Editing.
yeah. So you shouldn't have to edit except for when you're throwing things together. So if you all can't meet together and you can't record together, you'll just sort of put one audio file against another audio file. And it sounds really complicated, but when you open up one of these files, it's a lot easier than it sounds.
Okay.
And like I said, once you start working on this stuff, and this is why you should do it early, this is something I could probably help you with, because this is one of the like basic things. Once you open it, you'll see it. But IT can also help you with that, and I'm sure that they would talk you through it on the phone if you're not able to go to CSUN as well.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. It's going to be challenging, but I think it's going to be worth it. It'll be something unique that other people might not have experience doing.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have the other question. I saw my group members, and how do I contact them?
So you should see your group members. Did you get my email from earlier today?
I did, yeah.
Okay. So the email tells you a little bit more about this, but you can find your group members on Canvas. If you go to the People tab on Canvas, and then you look and there's like a section that says Groups.
Yeah,
You can
yeah, I saw it. But when I click into their profile, I can't see any contact.
okay.
Yeah, okay. Like email or phone number. There's nothing there.
Okay. I'm not sure why it doesn't show up. I was under the impression that it would for you all. Let me figure out the logistics on how. I think you might be able to look them up in the people section and then click on the link for the individual, and then it'll give you a contact.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I'll see if I could send us an email, at least for our group, after this, and see if we could link up, whether it's through that group discussion thing or through the inbox of Canvas. So just look in your inbox on Canvas, and hopefully something will be there once we finish this.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah, well, and now that you've asked that, and I know that you can't see it, you might see an email from me giving directions on this as well. You all sound like you're going to have it figured out, but thanks for letting me know so that I can let other people, if they're having trouble contacting each other. Okay. Are we good now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share the PowerPoint real fast. And this actually, I'm not going to give us examples or anything to walk through because I think this reading was relatively straightforward. That might not be true, but so I'm going to try to get us through this as fast as possible, especially because this took a little bit long. And I know you all try to plan for about 30 minutes. So, all right, so here's the discussion that we have in store for today. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by talking about leadership traits and gender stereotypes, as well as forms of gendered charisma. So we'll get to all of that. And then we'll talk about whether Hillary Clinton performed within the expectations of her gender according to the content analysis that they performed. So that's the plan. Let me see if I can get this. There we go. Oops. All right. So this paper starts by sort of telling us that there was a point in the 2008 election where Hillary Clinton shed a couple of tears. Some media were framing it like she cried, but it was more like a couple of tears. And the media suggested that at this point, she was going to become more feminine with the way she was being a politician. She was still trying to beat out Barack Obama. It wasn't looking so good for her, but the media was guessing she's going to try a new strategy. Typically in class, we talk more about how crying affects men in different ways than women, especially when they're running for president. So why would I say that men are affected in different ways if they were to cry and they were running for president? What do we know about the leadership expectations of the presidency?
It's very masculine in nature, so you should have those strong dominant male traits, of not showing weakness or emotion in your decision making or, to the public. Kind of like how, back in the day, you're supposed to be viewed as a male growing up. Your dad tells you, oh, dust your jeans off, stop crying, don't be.
Yeah. And even today, like, the thing is, since we expect the president to be masculine or primarily masculine, women already have a bunch to work against, right? And so when they cry, they've confirmed all of people's expectations that they are not strong enough to be a politician or to be the president or whatever. When a man does it, sometimes, so either they're viewed as very weak, or if they do it in a way that's like a couple of tears, like Barack Obama did this a couple of years ago before he left office. When he cried, people were like, we can tell he really cares, right? So what I'm saying here is that men have a little bit more wiggle room because they're not working up against the gendered expectation that is being feminine, right? They'll still be criticized, but in a different way. Hillary Clinton has to work up against, she has to be masculine at all times, right? And if she's not, people are worried she can't do it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this theoretical framework. So as Joe said, gender and the presidency, we expect for the most part masculine role there. The only time we accept feminine roles are when they're dealing with education or women's health or something, again, connected to that gender, right? Something else that's important with this particular reading, because it's targeting charisma, is there's a couple of things about the leadership that was going on in 2008, and this is one of the questions you had to answer, that made it so that we needed someone with charisma. Right? Do any of you remember? So there were 3 of them. Do you remember any of them?
Yeah, I actually did the project.
I know it's been a while.
No, it was, shoot.
Sorry, I'll give you one of them, and then you can see.
New leadership, low level of performance of the previous leadership in a time of crisis, and uncertainty, I believe I guess that goes hand in hand. And the second one was, I know there's one more.
So 2 of them sort of blur together. So one is the leader doesn't have charisma. The other is there's poor leadership. So those 2 things sort of sound the same, right? But the idea is that we've lost. So George W. Bush used to have charisma, but towards the end, I guess he sort of lost some of that. And part of it was because he was ranked so poorly towards the end, right? People started to misjudge him. And then finally, if you all don't remember, we were going through a Great Recession, or we were about to, right? So we were getting a lot of warnings about how much was wrong with the economy, and so people started to panic. And so all of these things made us as voters seek out someone who had charisma, right? Hence Barack Obama winning. But this article is trying to look at, like, before Barack Obama got nominated, what sorts of rhetoric of charisma did Hillary Clinton in particular use after that crying incident? Are you all with me so far?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So the last piece of this theoretical framework puzzle that we need to put in, so we have the understanding of gender in the presidency. We have the understanding that there were some unique things about 2008. And then finally, this rhetoric of charisma is we need to look at how charisma has been gendered. Okay, so charisma is one of those things that's really hard to pin down, right? Like, you can't really say why someone has charisma. Usually you just say they have it, right? I don't know how to say why. This article tries to explain it a little bit more. So let's talk about the different ways. So first of all, we have feminine charisma. And there's 3 ways of this. Yanin, do you happen to have one of the 3 forms of feminine charisma?
Let me check my document.
I'll fill in some gaps, and then you see if you can find one of them.
Okay.
Okay. So one form is similarity to followers, right? So this one, what we're saying with this is, obviously, it's very much like invitation rhetoric, right? We're saying you want to be able to show that we are similar. We have that familial connection, if you want to think about the forms of substance. Right. The next one is collective focus. So this is sort of like similarity to followers, right? So what you've done with similarity to followers is, like, we are all the same, right? She says things like, I have a daughter, I have a granddaughter, like, I'm just like you. The next one, collective focus, is I envision this world in the same way that you envision it, right? So I need to care, or I care about healthcare. I care about the economy, or whatever it is, because you care about it. Is that making sense, Yanin?
Yes.
Do you have the third one?
Yeah, I had the similarity.
So we got similarity to followers.
Similarity to followers.
We have collective focus, and there's one.
Followers was. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So this one is convincing the followers that I am actually listening to them because they are worthy to be listened to. Right. So in other words, you might do collective focus and followers where it's sort of all at once. For example, like if I'm in a classroom and my students are like, I'm wondering if anyone's going to run against Donald Trump, right? If anyone's going to run against Donald Trump, who's a Republican, right? Maybe they ask me that one day. I recognize their worth and show them that they are worthy. By then, the next class implementing, like, let's watch a video of a Republican who's running against Donald Trump, right? So not only have I shown them that they are worthy, I've changed my focus to make sure that we have a collective focus. Is that making sense?
Yes.
What questions do you have so far? Okay, all right, cool. So the next one we have are masculine forms of charisma. And these are the two A's. So we have adversity, right? And what do we mean by adversity? Anyone want to guess?
It's more, I wrote it down, I know I did.
It's like struggle. Think about this as like being able, so people who are masculine communicators are able to talk about their struggles, right? I think Barack Obama had a book called Adversity of some. Anyway, so men can talk about their struggles, right? Or masculine communicators. The next one is action, and what that means is people who are masculine communicators can talk about the things that they are actually going to do. Right, and the things that they have done in the past. Before we like say what the heck, are both of those clear?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, adversity was a little, I mean, I know what adversity means, I get it, but I just, maybe I like doing the reading, even I didn't really correlate to how, like, what were they talking about? Is it like, understand like overcoming an enemy, it said something like that, or is it more or less stories of how their adversity to get there, or could it be just used in any type of context?
It could be used in any type of context. So yesterday in class, I showed a video of Hillary Clinton during a debate, and she talked about how her and Trump have a lot of disagreements, right? Even that small thing is an example of like an adversity, right? A struggle that she is trying to get through. Another example that she talked about was that the Democrats were having trouble getting Congress to pass, to allow for Barack Obama's Supreme Court nomination, right? So that would be an example of like the struggle that's going into who she is. But it also does include your history, your like life history. Like, I worked so hard to get here. I pulled myself from my bootstraps. All of that is adversity as well.
So it's kind of like what Trump kind of does, always like pressing on like Congress to get things passed, or like oh, we don't have to be in a what do you call it, shutdown. You know, it's simple. Like if we kind of just the things that are standing in the way, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the way Trump communicates highlights adversity or the action that he is going to take.
The action, obviously, very well action-oriented language is, you know.
Yeah, but even like he is not shy to show that he is struggling, right? But in a way that like makes sure that we see him as the winner eventually.
Yeah.
When women do this, because they're expected to be feminine communicators, when they talk about their struggle, they're seen as like complaining. They're seen as like, well, either complaining or, and sorry if you're offended by this, but being bitchy. Right? Because, and I'm not saying it's okay, this is, our society has seen it that feminine communicators should not talk about that. They should just do what they have to do. Right. And I think Hillary Clinton, not just in 2008, but in 2016, really struggled trying to like walk this tightrope of being not too masculine, but also saying like, some of this stuff is ridiculous.
Yeah. I that's what I had noted. Like that's why I did the initial 2016 debate for my project, but I noticed that just from reading this reading and then like applying it to that debate, that of going against a character like Donald Trump, who's very, you know, hyper masculine in a lot of things in terms of, you know, speaking to the public.
Mm-hmm.
But she kind of reverted back to the we language, and she didn't really use a lot of the I or the self-referencing language in 2016. That, you know, and that was just one debate, but it kind of, you know, that mixed with what we had just previously talked about kind of just made me kind of think that she just walked into like a bad storm in 2016. She didn't really have I don't think, as much as we thought she was going to win, maybe she really never had a chance to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, we still had a lot. I think as a country, we had a lot to struggle with as far as whether we were ready for someone who was feminine to lead. Not that, and to be honest, I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but this article says that actually she became more masculine than feminine after she cried, right? But
Yeah.
the thing is, they expect her to be feminine, and that's like for some people really hard to wrap their heads around.
Yeah.
Not okay. That's just how it is. Although it's always important to note that she won the popular vote. So someone in my class yesterday was like, well, we got to remember that actually, if we think about the majority, people are ready. It's just, we're still sort of in between. Yeah. And I'm not one of those that's like trying to fight for that. I'm just bringing it up. It is important to recognize that that's true.
No, I agree. Trust me, not the other. I voted for Hillary, and you know, that was the last image I had going into the poll booth was Donald Trump up there doing some crazy stuff. I'm like, how can I vote for this guy? You know, but that's a totally different side story.
Yeah. Anyways, the final form. So we're almost done with this, but I'm good. We're seeing some examples outside of just this reading. The final form is the neutral form of charisma. So this one, there's 3 here. We have the moral/values. Both, any candidate can talk about that, right? Let's see. We have temporal orientation, and that one has to do with like timing. So when something is going to happen, I'm going to pass this immediately when I go into office, or this has been passed in the past and I didn't like it. Feminine and masculine communicators can do that just fine. Is that one making sense? That one's a little bit harder for some people to get.
It makes sense now a little bit in terms of that, just thinking back about some of the examples of seeing it in use. I didn't really like reading it. It was like, I got it, kind of had to do with the past and the present a little bit, but example wise, it kind of was lacking.
Yeah. This reading, because it's a content analysis, didn't really get into a lot of like heavy examples. They just sort of said, this is what it is. So hopefully this is helping. And then the final one, this is the one that like, when I first read this, I was like, oh yeah, it's tangibility, but really it's the lack of tangibility, right? So in other words, you become more charismatic if you do not have things people can hold on to. So if you are ambiguous, you are charismatic. Does that, before we like say, does that make sense?
Do you have like an example?
Yeah. So a good example of this is Obama's hope, Obama's change. All of that is ambiguous. Hope for what, right? President Trump's Make America Great Again. I don't see anything I can hold on to there. But the nice thing about that, and what makes it charismatic, is that more people can attach themselves to it because they can fill in the blank.
Okay.
So they can say, oh yeah, I want to make America great again in this way, right? And as long as there is something throughout history that was great for them, then that slogan is going to work.
So for it to be general, neutral, it needs to be tangible. There needs to be some type of little aspect of whatever you hold on to in that concept.
So neutral charisma, this form, is something that both genders can do, and it actually should not be tangible. It should be ambiguous.
So open-ended, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so for you to take a meaning for it's not okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is one of the reasons why charismatic leaders are so successful. Because if they're ambiguous, everyone can read into it in the way that they want to, and they can say, okay, I'll follow them.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yanin, are you on? I can't see head nods, so I'm just asking.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I understand, but I have a question.
Yeah.
Does one candidate could use the masculinity charisma and the feminine charisma together?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, and that's the trick about being a good politician. And although your article isn't getting into this, I have a feeling that Republicans who are men can get away with less of feminine forms of charisma, and Democrats who are men, like if you look at Bernie Sanders' websites or you see some of his speeches, you can see, or even Julian Castro, you can see that they are straight up being feminine in the way that they're trying to be charismatic, right? There's still a little bit of masculinity there, but there's a lot of like we, us, a lot of like I care about what you care about.
Oh yeah, that's
And
the feminine.
I think the trick is trying to figure out how to balance it. I think men might be able to do it a little bit easier than women because, as we said at the beginning, men already, like if you look at them, you stereotype them as masculine communicators. So they're already filling in that like, oh, the president should be masculine. I already want to vote for that. Right?
Oh,
Women, you can't just look at them and allow them to fill that in. In fact, you look at them and you think, oh my gosh, they're feminine. I don't know if they could do this. And then they have to prove to you not only that they're feminine enough to like confirm some of your convictions, but also that they're masculine enough to be a president. And that's really difficult.
Definitely. Yeah, I
yeah,
totally agree on that.
yeah, girl is that.
And I mean, on the flip side, to sort of conclude all of this, think about how, like, I know we talked about race a couple of weeks ago. Think about how someone who isn't just a white woman, but someone like Kamala Harris, who she's a couple, I think, Indian, Black, and white. So she's read as Black typically. So there's a lot of layers to the things that she's going to have to deal with when she's trying to get people to vote for her.
And even the gender that goes into that, you know,
Yeah.
because even if you're like, whether it be Indian, you know, different, whatever parts, you know, it just depends on that type of culture, you know, are women even empower in those types of, you know, those cultures that she resonates in? Because if they're not, you know, then it's going to be a lot harder to win over those male, maybe even female voters, who knows?
Yeah, exactly. And this reading is limited because it's on a white woman. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying we can't necessarily use all of this to really, really think through what it might mean for women of color, right? We can sort of, but there's going to be some differences.
Now, would you say that in understanding like the popular vote and how like obviously Trump had a lot more popularity than was expected, did a lot of that come from language that was not so much more masculine, or the fact that he was able to defer from the not being labeled as a politician, you know, like if he's saying like, I didn't vote for that, I'm not a you know, like more of that. I mean, is that more masculine talk, or is that just his ability to just differentiate himself from, you know, like within those confines? Because I've seen him, he uses the feminine side too, but he's very obviously more strongly on the action and the adversity language. And then, you know, obviously the general neutral aspect of it.
I mean, I would say that it definitely helped him that he was able to be so masculine, right? Or as you said, hyper masculine. But I say a lot of the reason why he won is because the media didn't know what to do with him. And so they covered him a lot. And that gave him a lot of exposure. And not always like positive exposure.
No, yeah, exactly.
But sometimes, as they say, like bad news can still be good news for someone who's trying to build a brand. And since if we're thinking about the context at that time, in 2016, we were looking for someone, like you said, who wasn't a politician. I think all of that, like the incongruity of who Donald Trump was, really made people like go to him even if they disagreed with some of the stuff he had to say.
Yeah.
I think so. Yes, I think some gender had to do with it, but I think gender probably had more to do with why Hillary lost than why Donald Trump won.
True, valid.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? I didn't bring an example this time because, yeah, like I said, I knew we were going to take a while on the group stuff. So.
No, I'm good.
No.
Okay,
No.
cool. All right. Well, as always, thank you for attending. And if you have trouble sort of connecting with each other, let me know, and I'm happy to like figure that out. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Cool.
you, Professor.
Yeah. Have a good day.
You
Have
too.
a good day.
Bye.
Bye.